In 18th century Europe, two sisters, Elvira and Alma, are going by carriage to their new home. Their mother, Rebecca, is getting married to a widower called Otto, who has a daughter the same age as the girls, young Agnes. At the end of the journey, the three come across a huge mansion, where they find Otto and Agnes waiting for them. The young woman soon takes a liking to Elvira, and after a brief wedding ceremony between her parents, she takes her to see her room. On the way, the two meet Isak, one of the stable workers who seems to have a strong friendship with Agnes. As soon as they arrive in her room, Elvira shows him her book of poems, written by Prince Julian, and confesses that her dream is to marry him one day. Later, the whole family gathers for dinner and Otto cuts the first piece of the wedding cake. The girls think he's going to give it to Rebecca, but instead he throws it in Elvira's face. Despite the tasteless joke, the girl just laughs it off so as not to make the atmosphere at the table even more uncomfortable. But seconds later, the old man starts to feel sick, to the point of coughing blood into his daughter's face. The young woman asks her father what's going on, but he falls face first into the plate of food and loses his life, hours after the wedding. Shortly after this event, Elvira goes to Agnes' room and brings her some chocolate to console her during this difficult time. The girl says that she also lost her father when she was a child, but over time she got over it and no longer misses him so much. On hearing this, Agnes thinks that her sister is belittling her feelings and says that her father only married Elvira's mother for her fortune. The problem is that Rebecca married him for the same reason, and Elvira realizes that both families are bankrupt. Desperate, the girl runs to the living room to tell her mother, but she runs into Rebecca, along with the bailiffs, who have come to collect the deceased's debts. When everyone leaves, Rebecca collapses on the floor and tells her daughter that this was her last chance of a comfortable life. Now, at an advanced age and with two daughters to raise, she fears that she won't be able to get married again and that the whole family will soon go bankrupt. Seeing her mother's sadness, Elvira promises to marry Prince Julian and make a better life for everyone. However, Rebecca doesn't believe this will be possible because of her daughter's clumsiness and because she finds her appearance unattractive. Her only hope would be Alma, but the young woman hasn't reached puberty yet, and according to tradition, she's not old enough to get married. The next day, a messenger arrives at the entrance to the mansion, telling them that Prince Julian is organizing a ball. The aim is to choose one of the city's girls to be his future wife, and Agnes is one of those invited. As soon as she receives the invitation, Elvira shows up, and taking pity on her stepsister, she asks the messenger to deliver an invitation to her as well. The young woman is overjoyed, as this could be her chance to win over Prince Julian, and rushes off to tell Rebecca everything. Her mother supports the idea, but Elvira's looks will have to be fixed, starting with her braces and her snub nose. She hires a specialist in aesthetic medicine, Dr. Aesthetic, to make her daughter the most beautiful girl in the region. The doctor promises to do it, but warns that the procedure will be difficult and very painful. Nevertheless, Rebecca authorizes him to do it, and the doctor begins the treatment in the living room, where he tells Elvira to get into a chair. The first step is to correct her smile, and using huge pliers, he removes the girl's braces. The pain felt by Elvira is very strong, but nothing compares to what she will feel during the process of correcting her nose. Using a tool, the guy breaks the bone in the girl's nose, and then puts a metal shaper on her face. The girl will be forced to wear it for several days to ensure that her nose takes the shape her mother wants. After this procedure, Elvira is taken to an etiquette school to train for the ball. For this, she and other young women will be taught by Professor Sophie and her companion, Madame Vanya. Classes begin, and while Sophie teaches them rules about how to behave at social events, Vanya gives them dance lessons. She organizes them in rows and tells them that whoever manages to stand out and learn all the steps will be in the front row. At the first rehearsal, Elvira tries hard to replicate the dance steps, but her clumsiness, coupled with the modeling on her face, makes Vanya uncomfortable. As punishment, she tells the young woman to go to the back of the queue and puts Agnes in her place. This incident creates a competition between the two sisters, and things only get worse during dinner. Agnes confronts Rebecca about her father's funeral, as his body is still lying in one of the bedrooms, while the widow has been using her remaining money on etiquette lessons. Rebecca replies that since Otto has no money, the only chance of having a funeral is if Elvira marries the prince. Agnes doesn't like this at all and leaves the table to see her father's body, which is becoming more and more destroyed and surrounded by flies with each passing day. The next day, the lessons continue, and this time Sophie teaches the girls how to walk and use a fan elegantly. As expected, Elvira isn't good at it, but Agnes is praised by her tutors for her beauty and grace. At the end of the day, a list is put up on the wall, revealing the order of the candidates with the best performance. As expected, Elvira is disappointed to see that her name, as well as being misspelled, has come last. Even so, she doesn't give up, and during the dance class, Madame Vanya teaches a new step and asks the students to repeat it. Elvira readily offers to be the first, but the teacher soon interrupts her performance. To make matters worse, the woman begins to humiliate Elvira, saying that she only accepted her into the class because her mother was paying for everything. She then tells the girl to go back to her position and warns her that if she wants to have any chance at the dance, she'll have to dedicate herself a lot more. As well as being humiliated, Elvira begins to harbor a strong resentment towards Agnes, who continues to stand out among all the girls in the class. During the evening, more embarrassing situations occur, when Rebecca orders the maid to put a corset on Elvira. However, as the girl is overweight, the clothes don't fit and her mother forces her to eat less. When the two of them leave the room, the young woman looks at herself in the mirror with a look of disappointment, but then she can't resist the impulse and eats a sweet, hidden in the drawer. Another day passes and Professor Sophie calls the girls together to evaluate their performances. As expected, Agnes is congratulated on her progress and everyone believes that she will be chosen by the prince. This only creates even more resentment in Elvira, who, when she is called away, tells her tutor that no one will marry her because of the way she looks. On hearing this, the teacher tells her that she is beautiful and just needs to make her outside as beautiful as her inside. To help her with this, her guardian gives her a locket and tells her that if she needs help, all she has to do is open it and swallow what's inside. Later, Elvira calls Alma to go on a picnic together, and when they arrive in the forest, the young girl promises to show her sister her present, as long as she doesn't tell anyone. Elvira then opens the locket and inside is a tapeworm egg, a worm that lodges in the human intestine. Elvira's goal is to swallow this egg so that the worm inside her can feed on everything she eats, thus helping her lose weight. As expected, Alma doesn't approve and says that her sister is already obsessed with the idea of marrying the prince. The girl is so disgusted by this that she takes her horse and leaves, leaving Elvira alone in the forest. Even against her sister's criticism, Elvira opens the locket and swallows the tapeworm egg, hoping that she will finally have the ideal body. She then prepares to return, when she hears the sound of an arrow being shot, followed by a bird falling beside her. When she looks to see who shot it, she finds none other than Prince Julian doing his business in front of a tree. The guy is with two other friends, who, on seeing the girl nearby, start making fun of her because of the iron curler on her nose. Even the prince joins in the provocation and Elvira runs away feeling very ashamed. Still, the girl remains in love with the man and watches him from afar, shooting birds with his bow and arrow. When night falls, Elvira returns home, taking a shortcut through the stable. But when she enters, she finds Agnes having a romantic moment with none other than Isak. The couple end up noticing the presence of Elvira, who runs back home and tells her mother everything she saw. Rebecca then attacks Agnes, saying that from that moment on, she has lost all rights in the house and even kicks Isak off her property. Days pass, and now Agnes is treated like a mere servant, having to work in the fields and look after the animals. As for Elvira, the plan with Tenia's egg has worked and the young woman has managed to lose enough weight to wear the corset. The day has finally come to remove the curler from her face and Rebecca is very pleased to see the result. However, she has more plans for improving her daughter's appearance and the next procedure is to put on false eyelashes. The young woman is then taken to Dr. Estetique's room, who tells her to sit on a chair and applies medication around her eyes. He then places the eyelashes on her eyelids and begins to sew them on, putting the girl through yet another very painful procedure. Hours later, Elvira wakes up in bed, her eyes bandaged and her stomach hurting. Even though she can't see, she tries to find the bathroom, but ends up in the kitchen and drops a plate of food on the floor. She then removes the bandages so that she can see and finds Agnes, who was startled by the noise and went to investigate. Even though she's hurt by her stepsister's attitude, the young woman helps her up and gives her some food. The next morning, Elvira attends another etiquette class, but Madame Vanya is more concerned about Agnes' absence. Sophie tells her that Rebecca has taken the girl out of class and tries to convince her companion that Elvira is the best option. Vanya then decides to give the girl a chance, and over the course of the lesson, notices that the cosmetic procedures have made her more presentable. After a day at school, Elvira goes to take a bath and calls for Agnes, who has become her private maid on Rebecca's orders. Not only that, but the young girl has been given a new name and is now called Cinderella by everyone. As well as feeding Elvira, she is also forced to read Prince Julian's book of poems to please her. However, when the girl tells her to comb her hair, Cinderella gets angry and tells her that she won't need a brush for much longer. This leaves Elvira confused, but when she looks at the bathtub, she notices several strands of hair lying in the water. For some reason, her hair is falling out rapidly, which sends the young woman into a panic. After showering, she runs back to her room without telling anyone, but minutes later, her mother appears, saying that she has a visitor. Before she can even change, a stylist appears, carrying a huge trunk. When he opens it, he reveals a beautiful dress, which has been specially made for Elvira to attract the attention of everyone at the ball, especially Prince Julian. To help her dress, Rebecca calls for Cinderella, who is once again forced to obey her stepmother's orders. The situation only gets worse when the stylist is impressed by the maid's appearance and, in a despicable act, kisses her. Cinderella resists, but instead of defending her, her stepmother scolds her and tells her to leave the room. After that, the stylist turns his attention to Elvira and finishes adjusting the dress, but ends up accidentally pulling a lock of her hair. Elvira tries to disguise it, but Rebecca realizes what is happening and believes that her plans have been ruined. However, the stylist has brought a blonde wig along with the dress and puts it on the girl, thus hiding her hair loss. At dawn, when everyone is asleep, Cinderella sneaks into her old room and finds one of her dresses. The young girl quickly takes it, as she intends to go to the ball in hiding, and thus have a chance to leave her life of servitude behind. However, she runs into Elvira, who realizes her stepsister's intentions and tries to stop her. The two begin to fight, but Elvira gets the better of them and, in an act of selfishness, rips Cinderella's dress. Seconds later, Rebecca appears and Elvira asks her mother to stop Cinderella from going to the ball, or her chances of winning the prince will be ruined. Rebecca says that her daughter doesn't need to worry, because now her stepsister doesn't even have a dress to go to the ball. This calms Elvira down and she returns to her room, with her mother giving her some medicine to help her sleep. In the meantime, Cinderella picks up her torn dress and goes to the room where her father's body is still lying. Even in a terrible state, the young girl lies down next to him and falls asleep. In her dreams, Cinderella encounters a strong light, which comes from her deceased mother. The woman says she is happy to see her daughter again and promises to help her get to the ball. With her magic, the girl's mother sends the worms from her perished husband's body to the dress, and in a few seconds, they begin to sew up the torn parts. Once the dress is ready, Cinderella's mother gives her a new pair of shoes. Finally, she promises to turn one of the pumpkins on the farm into a carriage, so that her daughter can be taken to the ball like a real princess. However, she warns Cinderella that she must return home before midnight, because when the clock chimes, all the magic will be undone. Finally, the night of the big ball arrives and Elvira goes to get ready, but more and more strands of her hair begin to fall out. This only makes the young girl more nervous, but her mother quickly puts on her wig and tries to calm her down. With everything ready, the two go to the ball, and when they arrive at the prince's mansion, the butler begins to introduce all the candidates. Throughout the evening, the girls fail to impress Prince Julian, who looks at them all with a bored expression. However, when Elvira's turn comes, the girl's beauty, obtained through much pain and suffering, impresses everyone, including the king and the prince himself. Then it's time for the dance performance, with Elvira being the main star. Unlike the first rehearsals, the young woman manages to replicate all the steps correctly and leaves the audience amazed at her grace. When the show is over, it's time for the ball and all the girls form a circle around the room. Then the prince passes them all to decide which one will be chosen for the first dance. After passing some of the girls, he finally goes up to Elvira and invites her to be his partner. The young woman can't believe what's happening, but she keeps her formal posture and accepts the invitation. The ball begins and everyone starts dancing, while the prince can't keep his eyes off Elvira. However, to the girl's misfortune, another young woman appears, wearing a beautiful blue dress and with her face covered by a veil. This young woman is Cinderella, who, thanks to her mother's help, has managed to get to the ball in time. Without hesitation, the prince leaves Elvira behind and asks the new girl to give him a dance. Once again, Elvira finds herself defeated by her rival and tries to control her anger and sadness so as not to lose her poise. However, she starts to feel sick and runs away from the party in search of a bathroom. When she arrives in an empty room, the young girl can't stand it any longer and starts throwing everything out, including the tapeworm eggs. The girl is desperate to see what is being born inside her out of sadness. Shortly afterwards, her mother appears, but instead of comforting her, the woman orders her to go back to the ball, as there are other suitors waiting for her. Elvira just wants to go home, but her mother slaps her across the face and tells her to pull herself together. Left with no choice, she returns to the ball and Rebecca forces her to dance with all the young people at the party. During the dance, Elvira begins to hallucinate worms all over the place, and in the midst of her mental confusion, she sees Cinderella's face staring back at her. Suddenly, the clock chimes, indicating that it is midnight. Just as her mother warned her, Cinderella is forced to flee the party before the magic is completely undone. During her escape, she ends up leaving behind her shoe, which is found by Prince Julian. Then, in front of all the guests, he tells them that the young woman who wears the shoe and fits it perfectly will be his wife. The ball then ends and Elvira returns home, sad at having missed her big opportunity. When she gets home, she finds Cinderella in front of the fireplace, feeding one of her pet mice. Elvira's hatred reaches its limit and she pulls a knife on her stepsister, demanding that Cinderella give her the shoe. The girl manages to dodge the attack and disarms Elvira, but she knocks her to the ground and tries to eliminate her. With great effort, Cinderella breaks free from the girl and runs to save herself, but ends up tripping on the stairs and dropping her shoe. Elvira manages to catch it, and at the same moment, her mother appears, revealing that she is accompanied by one of the guests. Cinderella runs away and Elvira shows her the shoe, saying that she finally has a chance to marry the prince. However, Rebecca doesn't care anymore, as she has now found someone to marry and her daughter is no longer useful in her plans. Disgruntled, Elvira goes to her room and tries to put on Cinderella's shoe, but it's too small for her feet. In an act of desperation, the girl puts her right foot on a table and removes her own toes with a knife. The young woman's cries of pain make Alma run into the room and, using a piece of clothing, she squeezes her sister's leg to stop the bleeding. Her mother then appears next to her companion, but on seeing so much blood in front of her, the man collapses on the floor. Rebecca then gives Elvira the same medicine to put her to sleep, but soon afterwards, the woman tells her that her daughter has destroyed the wrong foot. The prince had taken Cinderella's left shoe, so the other foot will have to be destroyed to fit Elvira. Alma is horrified by her mother's attitude and leaves, but Rebecca is determined, and with her daughter gone, she removes the toes from the other foot. The next morning, Elvira wakes up startled to find her feet bandaged. The girl tries to get out of bed, but has no balance and starts to drag herself across the floor. She ends up overbalancing on the stairs and sliding down the steps, which only leaves her face even more bruised. As she tries to get up, she sees Cinderella in the doorway, wearing the same dress as at the ball. The young woman observes her stepsister's sorry state and leaves, where she meets Prince Julian and puts on her shoe, proving that she is the one to marry him. Finally, Elvira's dream was lost forever and she fell asleep on the floor, knowing that all her effort and suffering had been in vain. Minutes later, Alma wakes up her sister and tells her that they are going to abandon their mother and flee the place. First, however, the worm must be removed from inside the young woman, and to do so, Alma pours a bowl of milk and gives her sister an antidote. As soon as Elvira drinks it all, the worm starts to come out of her and is attracted by the strong smell of the milk. With a lot of effort, Alma manages to remove the creature and saves her sister's life before it's too late. Afterwards, the young woman goes to collect her and Elvira's belongings, but before she leaves, she steals one of her mother's jewels to exchange for money. Finally, Alma takes one of the farm's horses and, together with Elvira, the two set off. The sisters' future is uncertain, but at least they are both free from the clutches of their terrible mother. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.